Karen Bates moved her family of 10 to Mexico to serve abandoned teens, but quickly learned that compassion without boundaries is unsustainable. Today, she's sharing how she found her way back to herself and how you can protect your own purpose without losing your heart. Stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest, Karen Tavares Bates. She's the founder of Find Your Path Mission and a mom of 8 who learned about boundaries the hard way. After moving her family to Mexico to build a home for abandoned teens, she discovered that saying yes to everything nearly destroyed her ability to do the work she felt called to do. Now, through her book, The Compass, Find Your Path Mission Number 1, and transformational service programs, she teaches others how to access their inner wisdom, set healthy boundaries, and create purpose-driven lives. So thanks for being here with us today, Karen.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to get to talk to you.
Tell us a little more beyond that bio about your story about finding your path, your mission.
I think for me it started probably when I was just a little girl, because my mom would tell us stories, and she didn't really like to talk about her past very much because it was very painful. But she did tell us stories every once in a while. Her mom died when she was 5, and her dad was an alcoholic. So he gave the kids away, just left them in different places. She grew up going home to home, sometimes on the streets, not really having a stable place ever. I remember one time when she was telling us about how she got back to where she was living at the moment, and her clothes were all over the street. That was the way that the people were saying, like, we don't want you here anymore. So she had to pick them up and find a new place to live. I remember thinking as I hear her story, like, if I had been there, if I was an adult, I could have taken her in. I would have loved to have given her a home. And so that's where my heart started opening up to the pain out there. And in 2020, I decided to take my family on a humanitarian trip. When we went to the orphanage, I remember being a little nervous, knowing it was going to open up some of those feelings that I had when I would hear my mom. Sure enough, when we got there and we started meeting the kids and getting to know them, I saw my mom in all of them, this desire to have someone see them, care about them, and notice that they were there. And yeah, the drive home from that, we say goodbye. We've been there with them for a week. And I just thought, okay, here I am, an adult in the life of these children who need love and who feel cared about. What do I do? I just prayed a lot that drive home and tried to figure out, like, how else can I help? It doesn't seem like I've done enough. And one of the thoughts that came to me was to start a humanitarian school. At the time I was living in Utah, and it was a hybrid program for homeschoolers. So it was 2 days a week, and it had 4 pillars. It was permaculture, so we could learn about how to grow things in a way that works with nature and nature's principles and systems. And then an entrepreneurial aspect where the kids would make their own entrepreneurial projects and earn money for their businesses as well as going on humanitarian trips. My idea was to get more families out there, to get to know them and care about them. We started selling things, getting more families out there. The third aspect was to challenge yourself. We were doing it at a ropes course where the kids would learn getting out of your comfort zone is good and it feels uncomfortable, but you learn and grow and learn more about yourself. The third aspect was the precursor to the book I just wrote, which is basically learning how to hear your inner voice and make goals in alignment with your values, and then create little systems in your life that actually allow you to reach them instead of just like having a vision board and hope they happen. You create like gentle systems. And so that's where it started, teaching these kids how to do that. From there, I started taking families. And the more we went, the more I got to know these kids and I started to see some of the issues and problems they had. Sometimes I'd be home after these trips and I'd get a text from one of them saying, I ran away, but I'm going to be at this place. One particular one that hit me really hard was a young man who was 13 and just a sweet boy. But he was big for his age, so a lot of times was giving more responsibility than maybe was okay for him. And he just felt unseen. Anyway, he ran away. He sent me a text. I've been on the street for 3 days and I haven't eaten anything. I don't know what to do because I can't go back. I think you could go back and see if they'll let you stay. He's not going to let me stay, but they'll send me to a holding place where they keep kids that run away. I've heard about that place and I'm scared to go. Just back and forth texting. And eventually I said, living on the street is going to be a lot worse for your future than having to be at this other place where at least you'll have food, shelter, and education. And then you'll eventually be okay to go out and do some good in the world. And if you stay on the street, things are not going to. I see some police nearby. I'm going to turn myself in. Thank you for helping me, and I hope to see you again someday. It just broke my heart. The options are pretty bleak. We just had an option C, somewhere else we could go. And that's when I started playing around with the idea, telling my husband, if we could live there, if we could help and welcome some of these kids, give them some guidance, love, and safety, that could really be something amazing. It seemed out of our possibility just because my husband doesn't have a job he could remotely work from, but it just stuck in my mind. Eventually, he felt, okay, we can try this. So we sold all of our stuff, our home, and we used the money from that to build a house in Mexico and get a ropes course going so that we could start these educational experiences for these youth as well. And that was going to be the way that we also had an income if we could get people the ropes course. That was the plan. Of course, things don't always go according to plan. Life, where you can plan your life or your year or your day, and you have a straight line that you think it's going to go. It's usually learning experiences instead of plans. It's been really good. We've learned a lot. One of those things is boundaries, so that's what we were going to talk about today. Yeah, we've been there for a couple of years. We're just a baby nonprofit still getting started. I feel like our first 2 years were almost like general education, like how do you live in Mexico? And so just different things, and then just building the connections, getting to know the community and stuff like that. And now we're kind of like, okay, now we can start working with these orphanages. We have the program now. I wrote the book. I have it in Spanish, so take it to the orphanages, and we're going to start working with the kids, inviting them over to our place for the weekends and summer camps, and moving forward with what we went out there to do. So that's where we're currently at.
That's incredible. I love hearing about your story. So different than the typical stories I'm hearing from people that are writing books. It really just started with a connection to your mother, hearing her story and having this empathy for her. And then it moved on to, how can I help? I think a lot of people, more the culture, more self-centered kind of approach, really hard to look outward. And you're able to work outward. And I'm curious, as you've been able to do that, do you feel like you've had more peace and fulfillment as you've looked outward instead of just at yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a balance, right? And I think that's one of the things I learned too, is that empathy comes really natural for me. I think it's something I was naturally born with. I just have empathy really easily. I walk into a room, the saddest person in the room, that's where I would feel like my emotions could go. Just a place where I need to make sure that person feels included. And I think that's a good thing to a point. When you don't know how to extend that same empathy to yourself and that same compassion and care, it can become not as good. That's when you stop having boundaries. Maybe you don't even realize that they're needed. Like you're not even your own person. And that's where I found myself a lot. It came from the natural empathy, and my upbringing was a little bit of caretaker. So I took care of the emotions in the family. And when I got married, I kept doing it. That's who I was used to being, who I was becoming, really. We have some sort of big moment where we're like, oh, this isn't working anymore. And what do I do? I think my first one was when I got diagnosed with autoimmunity. That was a big shift where I started having to ask myself, what do I need? At first it was physical, like what do I need physically to be healthy? But then when I started noticing mind-body connection, it became like, what do I need emotionally to be healthy? And so that started the path. That's when I started being able to write the book, the initial precursor to what I have now. I started to make that shift. And then it came again when I was in Mexico, and I noticed I was not in a healthy place because of this. Maybe it would be called toxic empathy, where I'm trying to help so many places and taking things on that weren't really mine to take on, and learning to have the faith not just to do. I think we all think of faith as action, right? I see a need and fill it and I help, is learning what to let go of, or learning what not to do, learning to trust God too. So that's not mine. I don't have to step in there. So learning that aspect of it too was really important.
I appreciate you sharing that, because we hear about toxic positivity, but we don't really hear about toxic empathy. And that definitely is something that can happen where we lose that balance. Like you mentioned, looking at those people in the room, your heart might go out to that sad person, but maybe that empathy, you take on too much of what they're feeling and get stuck in it sometimes, or even just forget yourself in that process. Tuning in a little bit more about what we can learn from it is asking ourselves the same questions, like, what do I need physically? What do I need emotionally? And having greater self-compassion and empathy for yourself, so you're willing to give yourself those things too, and not just others. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's really key. It's okay to feel it and hold it with them. That's good. But then when you take it with you and feel like you've got to fix it, and it's really their thing to fix, it can be a support, place of safety, but you can't solve people's problems for them, right? Your job is to learn how to do that. Learning to separate what's mine and what's yours, and being helpful, kind, and loving through it all, but not trying to be the savior of everybody else.
Yeah, another great point. Allowing, and that's what we see a lot in therapy too. So my job as a therapist, that when those fixers, those of us that like to fix things, it's because we're very anxious when other people have these big feelings, make them go away. So that's part of us that wants to fix them. And there can be something great in that, like that virtue vice side of it. And that vice side of it is maybe we can allow them to feel those feelings. And maybe I can lean into it feeling overwhelming, and maybe it feels a little tense to me. I know a lot of my clients do. But I want to go back to your story a little bit. You talk about boundaries. You mentioned that. Like in this journey, and it's quite the journey, you alluded to some boundaries, but do you have specific ones that you set with yourself, or maybe others that taught you a lot or helped you?
When I first went to Mexico, I saw a lot of need. It was like, this person needs a ride. So I was constantly moving. Towards the end of the summer of 2024 was really hard. We had a lot of rain, and the road that worked for us in the spring had just turned into this big mud puddle full of water. And so thankfully, the man that came out to build our ropes course, he volunteered his time to build it for us because he's a really good man, the owner of Class Ropes Course in Pueblo, Utah. He came out to build our ropes course and drove all the way from Utah. He lived like 2 hours from Cancun. They came out, built the ropes course, and he donated his 2 trucks and then flew back. The only reason we could make it to our house during that time was because of his truck. Sometimes his truck would get stuck. We were like pushing trucks, like electricity would go out. There was a ton of mosquitoes that year. And so we would run to the car, close the car, and then we'd kill the mosquitoes in our car so we could start driving. Like, it was just bad. And sometimes we'd have to take our groceries through because the car would get stuck. So we'd grab our groceries, run through the mud. We had to take our shoes off or they'd get stuck. And with the mosquitoes, it was just emotionally draining that summer. And for me and the kids, and we had interns with us, and they were amazing. They helped keep the morale up a ton, and they helped so much. But by the end of the summer, I was just like really emotionally, how would I say it? Like, I still felt strong in what we were doing, but me, myself, it just didn't. So a friend came like at the very end of that summer, and she's like, I feel like, this is an interesting analogy she gave me. She's like, all of us are like a checkerboard, and you're the queen of your checkerboard. I see like you keep sacrificing yourself to save other pawns, and they haven't made the trip across the checkerboard yet. And instead of giving them the opportunity to do that, you're sacrificing yourself. I was like, oh, that's such an interesting way to put it. Another person put it, you're giving away all your bricks and you're not building what you came here to build. I was like, yeah, I see that. I'm forgetting the purpose of why we're here and getting so focused on everybody else's issues and trying to help. I came home that first summer and I started learning about boundaries. That's the first time I realized that this is a concept I think is really valid. I had blown it up before, but once I started to see what it was doing to me, I was like, okay, I really need to figure out this boundary thing. So I went back and I started trying to practice boundaries, trying to say no when I noticed this is something that's not mine to take. But there was still something missing. I still found myself in situations where even though I had spoken the boundary, I couldn't be assertive enough to enforce it. So this last time I came home, I delved into that not valuing myself as much as I was valuing other people. I wasn't able to be assertive because I didn't see myself as I needed to see. I still wasn't in a place where I could hold space for myself, where I allowed myself to take up space, to have needs and wants, and to take up space and to still be loving and kind, but to be a whole person. And so that's what the work needed to happen next, is to not just have boundaries, but to care enough about myself to be assertive in them, to say, okay, this really needs to happen. It's not just a request or a hope. I really do need to make sure that I am a whole person as I go into this, so that I don't lose myself in this whole purpose because I'm trying so hard to help in places that probably are not mine to help.
Absolutely. And I think that would resonate with a lot of listeners too. Maybe we're not in Mexico. Did you say 8 kids? 8 kids. And you're dealing with a lot, and you're in this pattern of giving, 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 over giving. You said that you weren't assertive and you weren't caring enough about yourself to thrive, not only for you, but to model that for your kids too. There's this balance here that needs to be achieved. And while what you're doing was so beautiful, like caring about other people, it's doing it in a healthy way and stepping back from it, making sure you're doing it for the right reasons and also in a way that is productive and healthy for everyone. I love both of the analogies that you gave, but especially that one about how you were giving away your bricks instead of building what you wanted or needed to build. I think a lot of us do that. I think we can resonate with what are we trying to build, taking a step out and looking at that, examining our motives and intuitively what feels right and not just what appears like it's right. It sounds like you recognize that a little bit and you course corrected as you learned. So beautiful. Can you take us through that a little bit more? How you're able to care more about yourself and be more assertive in what that looked like?
Yeah, I think a big part of it for me was meditation. And I have ADHD, so whenever I would hear the word meditation, it was like, so boring. I can't meditate. But I started listening to guided meditations that talked about boundaries. One of them in particular, I changed it a little as I was listening to it. She's walking you through your inner landscape, going inward, and you see a figure. And in my mind, I picture Jesus. And he takes you to a reflective pool. And here's all these people that love you and are telling you something. But instead of the people, I pictured what he would say in this pool. I see myself completely different. I had this white crown and this flowing white dress and this vision of who Jesus sees me as. I think it was the self-honoring. When I'm talking about self-love, okay? It's more like this honor of self that allows me to say, oh, this is what's okay for how people treat me and how I treat myself. And I start to see, it's almost like meditation starts to help you understand who you really are when you go inward and start to explore. I had gotten caught up in the culture of right. And my husband and I would do this. Okay, we have a difference of opinion. Who's the most right? Instead of, okay, we both have different values and they're both good values. So how do we put both of our values into something and create something good out of both values? I started to understand what are my values that are really important to me and how do I live life in alignment with those instead of trying to figure out how do I live in alignment with that guy's values and this person's values. We all have different values for a purpose, and that's what we're here to fulfill. Instead of judging them and thinking, maybe I should have those values. It's like, why is this so important to me? And then starting to build life from this place of, I can honor that and move forward in a place that holds that space, doesn't let it go because it seems like other people's values are more important.
A lot of beautiful things in there that I want to draw attention to for a minute. Meditation, same thing. So many of my clients, myself included, there's this internal eye roll, like, oh, brother, really? Most people that struggle with it are the ones that need it the most, where it's hard to be still, like they're addicted to productivity or something. I'm definitely there at times, for sure. And I appreciate how you said, okay, maybe I didn't even know how to do it or all the steps, but even just starting with those guided meditations. I love guided meditations. I've been do walking meditations, and how that one was really impactful of how Jesus sees you and being able to do these visualizations, almost like hypnotherapy, the way you talk about it, where you're able to really see and feel it on a heart level of what it looks like to honor yourself instead of focus so much on what's right, what's wrong. Instead, how's it okay for them to treat me? How do I treat myself? As you move forward with more insight, it's collaborating with your husband or really seeing his values and appreciating them instead of dismissing them. Okay, I'm right. He's right. Appreciate all those things that you said. Maybe our situation is different, but I think a lot of us can get stuck in that. It's difficult to collaborate, to appreciate other people's values and respect them, but also it's very hard to honor ourselves, and we get stuck in that. Maybe we haven't had that aha moment like you did. Maybe we don't really know what is okay for how others treat us or how we treat ourselves. And that is so pivotal, so foundational on starting to build up what you want if that is not in place. Thanks for joining us for part 1 of this powerful conversation with Karen. If today's episode resonated with you and you're ready to set boundaries that protect your energy while still showing up for your family, check out our upcoming group coaching on fulfillmenttherapy.org. It's the perfect space to explore what fulfillment really looks like for you. Don't forget to share this episode with your friends and family. We'll see you back here soon for part 2. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.